and welcome. My name is Emily Prieto, and I'm the co-host of the Seeds of Tao podcast alongside my husband, Joshua Prieto. We're also the co-owners of the Seeds of Tao education platform and incubator for regenerative entrepreneurs. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast for impact entrepreneurs creating regenerative enterprises. We often get asked what exactly a regenerative enterprise or impact entrepreneur is. So if you're wondering, a regenerative enterprise builds triple bottom line profits through the practice of ethics and principles that lead to a more inclusive, fair, and balanced economy. Impact entrepreneurs, or regenpreneurs, as we sometimes like to call them, are those willing and able to take on the financial and personal risks of starting and building regenerative enterprises. You'll get to know exactly what all that means as you join us for this and future episodes, but know that we welcome everyone to join us as we work to build regenerative economies together. That's exactly why we are here doing what we do at Seeds of Tao. Our mission is to help establish regenerative economies in every bioregion by serving individual regenpreneurs like yourself. In this podcast, you'll hear the startup stories in all their glory from impact entrepreneurs all over the globe. You'll learn and grow the skills of building a regenerative enterprise from your peers, mentors, and leaders. Finally, we'll get to know each other as you engage in the podcast and join the wonderful Regenerative Business Economies Network, aka regenBEN, an open community where peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenpreneurs come together to build and the regenerative economies of the future. Join us every month for a wonderful episode as we collectively move beyond sustainability and into our regenerative future. It all starts now.
Hello and welcome to the Seeds of Tao podcast. I have Judith Horvath on the air with me today. It's good to have you. How are you? It's got to be morning or still morning for you, right?
Yes, it is. It's Monday morning.
Monday morning. In whereabouts are you located?
I am in Central Ohio, USA.
All right. Well, we start off, we want to get to know you a little bit, Judith, before we kind of dive into your story. So tell us what got you up this morning. Kind of give us a little bit of the day in the life of yourself and help us to understand where you're at.
Well, thanks. I live on a farm and I've got a lot of animals, but I have I have a pet peacock. And he walks around, yes, and he walks around on my railing of my front deck. And so I can hear him pip, pop, pip, pop, pip, pop. And he walks on the railing first thing in the morning. And usually that's what wakes me up.
That's great. Because my dog woke me up this morning, right? That's a pretty typical one that we hear.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard the peacock gets me up in the morning. So that's a good one.
Yes. Yes, he crows very loudly during breeding season, and then I'm not so fond of him, but then that passes, and then he's back to walking around. So that's a nicer way to wake up.
Yeah. So they kind of crow like a rooster then in the mornings, or
it sounds completely different than a rooster, but they cry very loudly, even before the sun comes up. They make all kinds of strange noises. It's kind of like a call or a cry. And then sometimes they have this thing that sounds like a trumpet, and then sometimes they make this loud sort of honk. They're funny birds. They make the strangest noises. But yeah, I guess it's the equivalent of a rooster crow before dawn. Yep.
Uh-huh. Wow. So that'll get you going definitely in the morning. That is it that time it's just walking time. It's not breeding time right now.
It's past breeding time, so he's not making those loud noises anymore, right? He's just good. Walking this time of year. He's just walking around.
Well, that's a good way to wake up. Tell us more about your business. What kind of gets you excited to do the work that you do, and let's talk about the pieces of the work that you're doing on your farm and for other farmers and give us a better idea.
Sure. Well, I kind of do a couple different things. I am a working farmer, and then I am also an agricultural consultant. So on the farming side of things, I run my own farm for my family where we feed our family, and we have a garden. We have hair sheep, katahdin hair sheep for meat, and a couple Icelandic ewes for fiber. And then we also have dairy goats for milk, and then also for meat. So, and then we also have chickens and turkeys and a guard llama and a peacock and a partridge in a pear tree. So we have all of these things. Yes, we have all of these animals. And so I'm running the farm, which if you were to categorize my farm, I would categorize it as being a grass-fed livestock operation. Primarily, it is meats that I am focused on, grass-fed meats. That will be changing over the next couple of years. I'm getting an orchard put in and doing more vegetables. So it's going to be a little bit more balanced. But right now it is primarily grass-fed meats. The other portion of my farm business that I do is a shampoo bar and soap, goat milk, shampoo bar and soap business. So that's sort of what I do for farm income and keep the farm going, feeding us, and also making products from the farm. The other half of what I do is my consulting, which, don't get me wrong, I'm a farmer first. Without the farming, the other items would not be as, it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't be as legitimate. I'm a farmer first. But the farm stuff kind of keeps the farm going. And then the consulting kind of feeds the family a little bit more, it pays the bills, because it is very, very hard to make a living from just farming alone. So today, as a farmer, you have to be diversified. So the agricultural consulting stuff I do is based towards regenerative farming and helping my clients to become more resilient, sustainable in their practices, helping them achieve food freedom, set up rotational grazing systems, and transforming their lifestyle and their business projects and they do a lot of different things, but my clients, no two are the same, but the thing they all have in common is that they are trying to make their project, their life, their endeavor, whatever it is, more sustainable and less consumptive of the world's resources, more eco-friendly, working with the earth, not mastering it, being a good steward and not being a conqueror. And all through organic, sustainable methods and earth-friendly ways. So a lot of soil building and things like that. So that's what I do. It's a long answer. It's not very tidy.
No, it's good to hear that perspective as well. When you hear a lot of farmers that are starting off and whatnot, to understand that the income is going to be tight, and especially if they're going towards more regenerative practices, they're trying to make a transition. And they're trying to do things mostly bootstrapped in a lot of ways. They can't scale really, really quickly with lots of funds, and they're not taking on a ton of risk that way financially, but they're taking on risk in other ways to kind of get towards food freedom or whatever it is, like a homestead versus like becoming a farmstead and kind of moving even into bigger production. There is that reality that farmers these days, if you're not doing thousands and thousands of acres, you're trying to find other income other places. And even still, like you look at a lot of the commercial farmers, I grew up in Utah around a lot of farmers, and then the city and suburbia kind of took over the areas, and everybody started selling off their farms. But the reason why they were selling off farms and land is it was just so much easier to have an income and to do something different than to try and play with the harvest and work seasonally with some different crops that were there, right? And so it's a difficult way. And so we need consultants, we need lots of different, and we also need additional types of income for our farm.
Yeah, to your point, when you have people, even if they have the ability to spend a ton of money on a very fast startup of a farm, it's still very easy to sink $1 million into an infrastructure that doesn't work in your area, or it isn't thought out in a in a way that is friendly towards your working day or the water table or the way the water moves across your land or winter winds or, whatever the case may be, soil type. I have seen large enterprises where people spent millions of dollars trying to get started fast and they didn't bury their water lines deep enough. So the first year they had all of their water infrastructure was useless. It's broken. Things like that. So even if you do have a lot of money to spend, it's very easy to not consider things that someone who actually farms and has run into these problems or fixed them or lives with them has already encountered. I mean, you don't know what you don't know before you know it, right?
Yeah,
so, and farming isn't something you just kind of like take a class and start doing it. This isn't like crochet, right? It's a lot more to it than that. It's, no two farms are the same. So it takes a long time to get good at farming your piece of land for your farming style with your animals or your product in your area, in your local microclimate. It's incredibly personalized and specific and fluid and 3 million variables. So it takes a while to spin up. So what I really talk to my clients about is I'm going to help you sidestep avoidable errors. You're going to make your own. I know I've made my own errors, certainly, but I'm going to help you, not fall off of, the bike path in the first quarter mile, right? I'm not going to let you go down into that pit. I'm going to make sure your water lines are buried deep enough. I'm going to make sure that you understand that goats can't be contained with, 3 strands of wire. I mean, things like that, helping people select a tractor based on what they're going to be doing, understanding the difference between hay and straw, even things like that. So there's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of things out there to consider depending on what people want to do. And that's what I do. I help them sidestep the foreseeable, avoidable errors and help them, save time. Because when you got to start over and reboot, you lose genetics, you lose time, you lose money, you lose opportunity windows, and it can take many years to take a small step forward, and it can be very quick to get set back, a long time.
Let's take a moment for a brief promotional break and talk about the state of our world. There are famines, floods, and fires in our backyards, a global recession affecting our economies, and war and conflict tearing down our relationships with one another. You see it in the news, feel it in your wallet, and talk about it in your social networks. It's hard to think that it doesn't affect you in your personal life and bring you down in your work. Except you want to regenerate our lands, turn our economies into circular ones, and do it in collaboration and community with others. How are you supposed to do that when it seems like everyone's working against you? You're an entrepreneur and you have a business that's going to help us solve these problems and bring these solutions? You're telling me you're going to change people's minds and raise capital for your cause and bring in triple bottom line profits? You must be an optimist, a dreamer, or completely out of touch. Who's going to buy your products or services, take you up on that offer, or help you fund your do-good business? We will. Who are we? We are the Regenerative Business Economies Network, a connected group of impact entrepreneurs, peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenerative enterprise building. Together, we take on the financial and personal risks of building regenerative enterprises. It's all of us together that creates the change we want to see. We must believe in each other and the work we've devoted ourselves to. If you want to be supported and also lend support to impact entrepreneurs like yourself, follow the promotional link in the podcast description or head over to seedsofdow.com and click on Join the Community. With that, let's get back to the episode.
Well, I only felt a little bit of that. I mean, Emily and I, we tried to do the off-grid homestead for 3 years in Montana on a really small lot, just over 11 acres. And we thought we knew what we were doing to some extent, but we were coming from suburbia and we were well read and it started touring a little bit to go on farms. But it's one thing to be kind of woofing, and then another thing to like, now you have this property, you're supposed to be sitting on it for a year, for kind of practicing that permaculture, observe and interact. And trying to figure out what's going on, and then starting to develop it. It's that early stage for us. There were so many unforeseen things that we just really didn't understand, and it was scary. It was frustrating, and it really tested us to the point that we did say it was either that or our marriage, right? And so we kind of stepped away and said, no, we're going to take a break from this. We'll probably revisit it, doing the farm thing, but yeah, let's revisit this. And I think having someone that you're able to have that's many steps in front of you, maybe not too far in front of you, so you can actually relate with that person, but to see and help you and guide you through some of those potential, traps or pieces that can cause you to veer off and lose what you built. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So definitely a needed work, and also I want to know that. Yeah, I couldn't trust someone that wasn't really entrenched in their daily lives as well, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that you are a farmer, that you're practicing what you preach, that's all something that's would love to. I wish I had the resource of you then, right? You have this consulting business, you have your farm. What got you involved in helping farmers, and what also got you involved? How did your farm come to be? Do you come from a family of farmers, or where did this all start?
Yeah, it's a very common question that I get. All these questions, I get these a lot. So it certainly was not a straight line, nor was it planned from the beginning. It's like many good things, it sort of like came to be organically. I grew up always sort of being a nature girl, and I always loved the idea of having a farm, but I didn't come from a farming family. No one in my family is a farmer. I'm the only one in my family not in medicine, interestingly. Everyone else, they're all physicians and medicine. And so I was the only one who didn't go into medicine. I went into business instead. So I guess I've always been sort of comfortable, marching to the beat of my own drum, if you will, from a family perspective. But I always loved to garden and be outside and just walk in the woods and do outdoorsy things. Always enjoyed that. And got married, and I had our children. We had our children, and our kids had a lot of allergies, and we found that it was upsetting to see hives on your children and behaviors that were not good. And we didn't feel like we were very healthy the way we were eating and living. And I did some research and I did some learning, and I realized that the things that we were reacting poorly to, it wasn't a food allergy at all. They were additives allergies. And one of the things that I did is I did a lot of reading for material, and this was 20 years ago, but did a lot of reading from a group called the Feingold Association.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have no financial interest with this group, but the Feingold, Feingold Association. And they are dedicated to helping people understand the physiological effects and immunological effects that people, usually children, have from food additives. And so they publish lists of brands and ingredients that can help you kind of cross-reference if you're trying to eliminate X, Y, or Z from your kids' diet or your own diet. Then they publish these different lists that you can mix and match in different categories. It's a whole system. I'm not going to get into it all, but if you're interested in learning about it. But one of the things that they really emphasize is they teach you how to read food labels. Now that sounds strange, but truly, by the time you have learned the things that they teach you, you're practically waving a decoder ring across these ingredients, and it opens your eyes to what we're actually eating in our food. A lot of things that we eat in our food are not food at all. They're really not. So even things like nonstick sprays that they spray inside of baking pans when you get a loaf of bread. A lot of them have a lot of preservatives, and they're not required to put that on the label of bread, right? To tell you what are those nonstick things that you're also consuming, those, Teflon even it might be. So there's a lot of ways for us to accidentally ingest these forever chemicals by not understanding the way the food is produced and not understanding how to read the labels and not knowing what those ingredients that you can't even say and you just skip over actually are. One thing led to another. Next thing I knew, we were feeling better. I was cooking from scratch. I was watching Food Network. I was reading Alton Brown. I had ripped up my backyard garden. It was a half an acre. I had turned it into, backyard had turned into mostly a garden and some fruit trees. Added some chickens in there. Illegal, I might add. They were illegal backyard chickens. I got busted for these chickens, even though I had been bribing the neighbors for years with fresh eggs and everyone liked them. But, there's one person down the street who wants to bust you for breaking the rules, even though it's not hurting anyone. So anyway, we got busted, and my husband and I kind of looked at each other and said, do we want to go further? Do we want to stay where we are? Do we want to back off? We're kind of at this crossroads, this emotional crossroads. And we kind of decided, this isn't a phase. We're going to go further. So we sold our house and got a farm. I'm skipping way over. It took us 2 years to find the right farm. This was happening during This was happening right in the wake of the Great Recession. I had been unemployed for 2 years. We were canning vegetables and eating out of our basement. It was quite a struggle, and it really helped define us and strengthen our resolve in this sort of sustainable, resilient lifestyle. And it's surprising how much food you can grow in a small amount of land. And food's really expensive, and good food back 20 years ago was really expensive. It's hard to find organic food that wasn't going to break the bank, especially with 2 small kids and everything. Anyway, so we bought the farm and we moved about 20 miles from where we had previously lived. And we bought this farm, and it was 2013. So this was 10 years ago now, the time of this recording. And this farm didn't have a single flower. There were no bushes. There were no fruit trees. There was no garden. There were no fences. There was not a single flower. It was a big blank blah. There was nothing here. The fields were overgrown. It was brush 8 feet tall. It was brambles 10 feet tall. The barn had no door on it, no back on it, and broken windows, and there was vermin infesting. It's a nice piece of land, don't get me wrong, but the reason we could afford it is because it needed a lot of work. A lot of work. So we got to it. Yeah, we got to it, and we envisioned what did we want to do, and we decided that for the soil type that we had here, the best thing for us was sheep. Now, here's a little side tip. If you decide you're going to buy sheep, make sure you like what they taste like before you get into them. We did, but we had to try a couple different kinds of sheep before we found the right ones. But we started with sheep, and a farmer neighbor gave us 2 goats, 2 old goats that were getting bullied by his cows. So we got free goats to start with, and that was a learning experience. And we had already had our illegal backyard chickens, so we re-upped on chickens. And then we decided, hey, let's try turkeys. So we added turkeys, and you just kind of go from there. We started with these meat goats, which we weren't planning on butchering. We just had them sort of as lawnmowers. And then we kept on going and going and going. So fast forward many years, I had a successful breeding program with sheep. I had a successful dairy growth program. I had a successful garden. We have the beginning of an orchard. We had started an egg route business with 200 layers that we moved around on our pastures on a mobile coop. We had clients for our heritage turkeys, all going great. And then COVID hit. So all going great. COVID hits, and mind you, I was not a full-time farmer. I was still working corporate life. So business executive for operations management in call centers. So still doing that as my day job. And this was sort of weekend warrior and evening stuff. So really burning the candle at both ends. So suddenly being home for COVID gave me an opportunity to see my sheep and what they're doing every day and take notes. And it gave me an opportunity to not be in the car 2 hours a day and to take that lunch hour instead of running errands, spend it. So I had gained about 3 hours a day that I could dedicate towards whatever I wanted. So that's when I started my shampoo bar business and soap business. And I also started taking a lot of notes and doing a lot of reading and doing a lot of thinking and just really digging in and expanding the farm business. Well, at the end of COVID, it was time to come back. And I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And we had a reorganization at work, and I had the opportunity to do something different. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. I'll tell you what's different. I'm going to be a full-time farmer. So that's what I decided to do, because during COVID, people went from sort of, oh, that's cool, you've got a farm, oh, how funny, haha, to tell me more, I'm interested. Like the mindset of people that I was running into had completely shifted. I had joined a farmer's market. I had met so many people. So many more online blogs had popped up. I had started listening to podcasts of other people who were doing farming, watching more videos. So much more material is out there. So much more interest is there. Regenerative agriculture is an actual term you hear now. So I decided I can do this. It's going to be scary. It's going to be bumpy. This is going to sting a little bit, but we can do this. And I got into agricultural consulting. And business has really taken off. I mean, really taken off. My shampoo bar business is also quite successful, and my goat milk soap is in high demand locally. So I am sort of surprised and still sort of pinching myself that it has been as successful as it has so far, and I'm just getting started. So that's how I got here. It's a long story, but that's how I got here, accidentally. And, when we first started here at the farm, we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, the guy delivered our tractor and I said, can you show me how to use this? He's like, I'm the delivery guy, not your tractor coach. And I realized I am so ill-equipped for this. I was so ill-equipped. And I realized that the biggest place that I was ill-equipped for fast learning was the lack of terminology. And the lack of terminology was coming from the lack of generational knowledge. And I didn't grow up around it. And I didn't have friends that I could really talk to about it. I mean, my farmers that are around me, they're nice, but they're big ag. They're good, decent people, but they're mostly row crop farmers and grains. It's corn, beans, soybeans, or wheat. And so once every 3 years, the field next to me is corn, right? And I don't have a lot in common with them. They were polite and they're nice, but they kind of like giggled at me and snickered. Her sheep got horns. That's funny. Oh, look at those weird sheep. They're shedding like buffalo, it's kind of a funny thing. And when I had the opportunity to go forward into agricultural consulting or to go back into the corporate world, I realized I didn't want to give up the lifestyle. I love this life of being surrounded by nature and animals and too much work to do and never the same thing 2 days in a row, and being outside, active and sunshine and pure food and nutrient dense food and clean food. It's also meaningful to me. I didn't want to give it up. And I realized that I've made so many mistakes, and I had the luxury of time. I had the luxury of a very good income, quite honestly. And a lot of other people don't have that luxury, especially younger people today looking to get into agriculture, looking for deeper meaning, looking for a connection with the earth, looking to make a difference. They don't have the luxury of time because the world is moving so fast right now. They don't have the luxury of having the land, which we were able to afford because of dual salary, and real estate was cheaper then. And they don't have the luxury of time to learn and reboot and recover from mistakes because of the money cushion that I had, quite honestly. I don't have it now, but at the time I had it. And so over 10 years, I was able to kind of make mistakes, and we were able to recover from it and say, ooh, that stung, let's not do that again. But that could that could be something that kills a farm venture, right? And so I kind of looked at all these pieces when I was doing my little comparison list. Go back, move forward. Which is it? Back to something corporate and safe, or move forward into something farming and fulfilling and a little bit more risky. And I looked at it and I decided I'm perceiving risk because I've made so many mistakes in the past, and I can really help a lot of people if I am helping them sidestep those errors and teaching them the terminology and the sources and the concepts, and then give them a little push. Hey, there's this thing called the CSA. Hey, there's this thing called, whatever. And even sometimes just the terminology is all you need in a Google search to get started. But those terms are not immediately obvious. And I realized that I could do a lot of good. And when I realized that this felt on paper financially risky, but in my heart, I knew it was the right thing to do. And in my soul, it just feels so good doing what I love to do. I have to be careful not to go back and be too tough on myself, retroactively, and say, oh, you should have done this sooner. And now we're here now. We're just moving forward. But it's so fulfilling. I know it's the right path.
It's a great story to hear. And I think of all the other stories that I hear, because there's quite a few people that will go out and start the farm and try to make it. And I hear a lot more horror stories and failed attempts and whatnot. And I'm one of them, to say the least, that went out there, tried to do the farm, believed in the lifestyle, loved the lifestyle of just being always on the land, working on it. When we were doing our farm, I had my marketing and consulting business. My wife had a photography business, and we were trying to do that while we were doing the farm, but it kept us on the property for the most part, right? And allowed us to kind of work from home while we were trying to build this farm out. And I feel that unsurety in so many ways, and just like not knowing what I don't know in so many ways. And that right there is something. Let's talk about it. Like as you started your journey, it was very much the backyard garden. This kind of where it came from, right? And just trying to eat healthier. Well, no, that's where it really started. It was health, right? You mentioned that all your family is in health. Well, you are too, right? You got into it and was really trying to go from a different approach, right? Essentially, and Emily found the Fang because of gut challenges and other challenges with kids and whatnot, and so very similar was a health concern there, and just wanting to live a different lifestyle, I think, is why a lot of people get into this. But when you were making that decision, I want to kind of take us back to that moment of moving away from maybe the suburban or the the small little half acre that you had, and saying, let's just go for it. Right. I don't want to get busted for chickens anymore, but I want to have those chickens. Let's go do it. I think there's some important things to unpack for entrepreneurs, especially those that are trying to start a farm, to make that risk assessment for themselves in their life, and then honestly, what it takes to just like kind of dive in, because I think that's maybe the first step. The first step is like just being willing to know that you're not going to know everything, and there's a good chance that you're going to fail, but you're going to do this. Like, what? Tell me more about that particular time for you when you're about to move on to or going out to find the land.
Yeah. So at the time, I didn't realize what I was doing, but looking backward, it's very clear what was happening. When I was doing sort of like mini homesteading in suburbia, we did that for 8 years, by the way. We did that for 8 years before we bought the farm. Now we've been on the farm for 10. So 18 years I've been doing this in one capacity or another. But those first 8 years in suburbia was very much like an incubator. like an entrepreneur, like a startup, like an incubator. That's really what it was. Yeah. And I was learning the lingo. I was learning the culture. I was learning the pain points and learning how to solve a need for a customer, me. And then instead of looking for someone else to solve it, I was finding ways to solve it myself. And in the process, learning about my customers on a deeply personal level, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah.
So yeah, that is very much an entrepreneur thing to do. That's just kind of the way I tackled it. But from a business standpoint, start small, fail small. And there's a lot of people who will say, just rip off the cord and just, go for it and fail fast and fail big and, don't fail the same way twice. But, when you've got two small children and you're 500 miles away from your family, we had just moved to Ohio from Pennsylvania. We didn't know anyone. We had no social safety net. We had no extended family in the area. We didn't even know the local geography terms. I mean, even from a social standpoint, it was really difficult. I was working from home part-time. My husband was working full-time, but not even knowing anyone in the neighborhood. There was a lot of risk there that I was unwilling to assume. And so I took the most risk that I could, given the constraints and the proper boundaries of not being, stupid with, having small children and things like that. So yeah, I burned the candle at both ends, but I learned a lot of things. But I really tried to focus on those things that would be applicable towards anything else in life, any future endeavor, a fun hobby. And when your hobby feeds you, that's all beneficial. Quite honestly, it's life skills for this particular thing that I was doing. But I also knew that I was teaching my kids these skills, and they were seeing us struggle. They were, and because kids watch you, they watch everything you do, and they're taking notes whether you want them to or not. They're paying attention for everything you're doing. So they saw me get unemployed. They saw us struggle. They saw us grow vegetables. They saw me reading cookbooks and watching food TV and learning how to, stretch a meal and and my daughter came with me to go learn how to butcher a chicken. I mean, you take those classes and you learn those things to do. And it gave me momentum too, knowing that my kids were watching and knowing especially that my daughter, because she's older than my son, daughter was really watching hard, and she was really putting it together and asking lots of questions. And that was also pushing me to do my best and not make a mistake. So in that sense, it was very much entrepreneurial incubator. When we moved to the farm, we weren't moving to something that was equal. We actually took a step back as far as infrastructure. We took a step back as far as established things there. Like we had gone from suburbia, at least I just had to add a garden into a lawn. Okay, that's great. Now suddenly we had a whole farm worth of jungle and neglected buildings and crap and broken water lines and overgrown everything and a quarter-mile long rock driveway that had been washed out up the side of a hillside, right? So there was a lot of things that we had to handle. So we really took a big leap forward in certain ways as far as biting off a much bigger piece to chew. But then we also took a step back where we were starting really from scratch and designing things from our own. And it was a big risk. And we knew it was a big risk, but we decided to kind of nip away at it. We were both dedicated to we felt more intentional. Now I wanted it to become a source of income, and my goal was for the farm to pay its own way. That was only my goal. I said, I'll find a way, we'll make the farm pay its own way, meaning the mortgage and the property taxes, and then the animals pay for themselves. That was our goal. And I felt like that was a lofty goal, but it was reasonable. And I said, we still are going to have our own living, but the farm's going to pay for itself. And then if it becomes an asset for future generations, then so be it. Or if our kids don't want a farm, that's cool. We get old enough, we sell it, right? Or we lease out the land to someone else who's getting started. So we really thought this through for plans B, C, and D. In case of failure, in case of injury, in case of illness, in case of, I don't know, comet strike, whatever. So, we thought it through and we decided that it was a risk, but it was a risk that we were willing to take because we were going to have a lot of health benefits and a hell of a story in the meantime. And from there, it just kept on going. I just kept on increasing every year and increasing and increasing. Usually I didn't increase in scale. I increased by adding another layer. So we only added one species per year. So we started with chickens because we knew chickens. So I was comfortable adding the goats because they were free goats and I already knew chickens. So we had goats and chickens. Then I added turkeys, which are not just big chickens. They were another one. And then the next year we added sheep, right? And so we added slowly. And yeah, we diversified. We diversified in that way. And that was goats, and not just goat meat, but goat milk, and then goat shampoo, right? And then it wasn't just chickens. It was also for us, for eggs, it was also selling the eggs. And then it was selling actual chicken parts. And then it was, selling actual birds and chicks and hatching eggs, and sending them across the United States. And so you can make a lot of money off of chickens. So we diversified in this area, right? And I wanted flowers. So I have 100 different varieties of daylilies, and I diversified in that way. And so by this diversification through this entire entrepreneurial process, without diversifying too far outside of your original scope, if something fails, you still got other things to fall back on. And so I had multiple streams of income coming in all the time because this is seasonal, that's seasonal, this can get eaten by coyotes, that can have a blight, right? And so this diversification was building not only an ecosystem on the farm itself, I was acquiring knowledge, acquiring contacts, and acquiring additional streams of income. And certainly within the first 4 years that we had the farm, we achieved that goal. That goal was the farm needs to pay for itself. The mortgage and the property taxes, and the animals need to pay for themselves. Bingo. We got it done. I didn't sleep, but we got it done. Yeah.
I love that little bit at the end. Just we didn't sleep, but we got it done. And
it was really hard. Work, I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't know it was going to be this hard. Oh, damn. Whoa. Over my head sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, and I love to get the different stories of entrepreneurs at varying degrees of where they're at in their journey, different types of businesses, and your story is really one that I really love because it's very much the bootstrapped way of getting this kind of farm going, contrasted to what's sexy out there, where you go and you get venture capital, you start off big, you go and that seems to be like something that a lot of people are looking for, but they also don't see a lot of the bootstrap work that comes before that. And you were also mentioning a lot of the work that comes before bootstrapping, right?
Yes.
Which is I had this little incubator for myself. It was called my half-acre garden, and we did everything we possibly could until we were really just being kicked out of what we were trying to do. Right? Our illegal chickens were needing to be legal now, and now we need to go. And so there's so many different types of businesses, all shapes and sizes, especially within the regenerative realm, right? Because we need all shapes and sizes to be able to help us transition towards something that's not this big conglomerate industrialized complex, right? Where we're actually and trying to figure out things that are being done already, but just in a better, different way, right? And decentralized versus centralized, right? And so I'm recognizing that story, and I'm loving that you kind of had this little incubator space and then moved in, and it's very much the slow, the permaculture principle that often gets discussed in our entrepreneurial ventures is the slow and small solutions, and kind of gradually moving through the business and observing and interacting as you're going through that is key. What I want to open up now for the last bit of our conversation is these entrepreneurs of all shapes and sizes, but building really focused towards a more regenerative future, right? Yeah. What would you hope for them as they're, listening to your episode, getting to know you a little bit more? What would you hope for them to take away from your story?
I would hope that people realize that they're not alone, that this desire is a growing trend. It looks a little bit different for everyone, but there is a big calling out there that people are feeling a similar urge to, that it's possible to achieve your goal in a regenerative way. I think our society over the past 50 years has not emphasized that. It's been very era of cheap oil and instant gratification. So today, I tell people there is a way to achieve your goal by working within the natural system and by working with nature to achieve your goals. And you will have pushback from your neighbors, or you will have pushback from other people in the business. And don't look down on them. They're in a different place. They're from a different era. They might not be able to make that change. Just respect those differences and move forward in your own way, because this is the new wave. And you're not alone. You're just early. And it's hard to be one of the early people. But stick with it. It's worth it. And you will find your own special way. And when you find your special way, you will draw the right people to you at that moment. Just keep an open mind and an open heart and do the right thing. And then speak your truth and speak from the heart. And those customers will hear your message and they will come to you. I don't know how it happens, but I'm telling you, it works that way. It really does. So don't lose faith. And, just keep at it. Keep at it. It can be done. There's always another way. There's always another way.
That's very helpful and very encouraging for those that are working through these businesses. And I love how you kind of said kind of draw from your own power, but don't let don't kind of frown upon those that maybe think differently, right?
Uh-huh.
I think it's a lot of times it's timing, right? For these cultural changes to occur. And in many ways, I think we either alienate ourselves or we alienate others because we're passionate about what we do. And that's just human nature in so many different ways, right? It's not just found in the work that we're doing here as regenerative in regenerative ag and regenerative business. But yeah, let's move together. Let's move forward together. And we can't shun or move away from others. We have to be alongside them as they're in a different place. And I really enjoyed that piece of the feedback. Kind of hit me because I think many of us as entrepreneurs are in the regenerative space can almost alienate our customers in a lot of ways. Because we're thinking, oh, well, they just don't get it. They're frustrated because they're trying to create a new narrative, but at the same time, they're alienating the client that they want, that would be willing if they just were at a different time or different space, or just had this amount of knowledge more, or was told something in a certain way, right? And so it's not no, it's just not yet, right? Where it's just kind of helping us to have a better perspective and of the neighbor that's maybe dusting their crops or spraying using chemicals, or that's a really frustrating thing to see when you're trying to do something on your own in a very different way, right?
Yeah. When I've got great GM crops growing next to my field, got super weeds blowing in, and yeah. I mean, it is frustrating, but I know that over time, these things will change. remember, as regenerative people, we have to be careful. When our system starts to show its virtue and its benefit, the rest of the world will abandon their ways voluntarily. You cannot change the world by berating it and how it's doing something the wrong way now, because even if everyone were to switch right now, the infrastructure, the process, the systems, the supply chains, all the logistics and everything, it's not ready yet. It's not ready. It's too dependent. It's all just in time. It's extraordinarily complicated as well as complex and very brittle. It's great and it's efficient, but it's also what makes it easy to break. And if we make too fast of a transition, as much as we'd love to, other things can break and people will suffer and bad things will happen. I'm speaking about our food supply chain. I'm not talking about everything. But, it's something as critical as food. It's not a very elastic supply. It's like 3 to 4% difference from year to year. It's not a very elastic supply. So we have to be careful not to break it in the process of improving it. And don't break it in order to improve it. Improve it. And then people will come along. I feel better when I eat this way. I feel better when I see animals on green grass instead of in a CAFO. I like this story. I enjoy talking to my farmer as opposed to going to Giant Eagle or Kroger and buying a terrible tomato in the middle of winter that could pass the car bumper test, right? Like you taste, right? It's terrible. But as soon as you taste that farm fresh egg, you taste that fresh heirloom tomato out of your backyard, it's like, I'm sorry, I broke you. Welcome to the club. I have now destroyed inferior food for you forever. And I take pride in that. And people are like, I tried this. I went here. I did this other thing. And now I can't eat it. I'm like, yep, you're not alone. It's okay. We got that. Come on over. There's more of us here. I'll connect you with more people. The other thing, I forgot to say this. Can I say two things? Say two things?
Oh, yes. This is part of the conversation that we're having here.
Do not compete with other people in your same space directly. Don't try to push them down to make your sale. All right. So I'm going to give you an example. If I have another person that I know who's selling the same bloodlines and registered sheep, and he's trying to sell registered sheep, and I'm trying to sell my registered sheep, I'm not going to put him down. I'm not going to undercut his price. I'm going to match his price. It is a big enough pond, but we're still early. There's enough customers out there. Find a different way to reach your customers or differentiate yourself in some other way. Don't compete with the other regenerative people. We're a community, right? Shouldn't be competing on price directly, and don't be competing direct. Find ways to differentiate and work together. It will pay you back in spades because we really need our community to be growing. It's a big enough pond. There's enough customers out there and there's enough demand. Focus on reaching those customers and educating people and bringing them over to our club instead of just growing your own business.
Yeah. And there's so much potential for collaboration and needed collaboration because in so many ways, a business, and that's coming from the old mentality of business as well, where competition is very much it's still real in regenerative markets as well, and you need to understand it and you need to know the economics of it. But there's you have these big businesses that are competing, and they're going to compete on price. They're going to compete because they can get big enough to where they have all their own. I mean, they scale. But the only way that we scale as a regenerative movement, and because we're not coming from a centralized system, and we're trying to decentralize, it's about collaboration. It's about working together, and I think it's really, really hard for us to break that. That's the mindset I'm noticing. That's really hard for us to break.
Yeah. I mean, all the business books teach it how to win against your competition. Okay. That might be competition, but I don't see other people in the same space, other farmers in the same space as being my competition. I mean, even in the early years when I was farming, there are other farmers that I decided to become friends with and not compete with and do differentiation. Even if I had I decided this guy's just doing brown eggs and I'm doing a pack of rainbow eggs or just green eggs. Even if it's just the color of the eggs, even though we're buying the same feed, we're raising our animals the same way. I'm charging more, he's charging more, whatever, it doesn't matter. I would find a way to differentiate and build that relationship, because even now today, I'm out of the egg business. He's still running it. So the transactional competition would have subverted that long-term relationship that I have, right? Relationships outlive transactions, and farmers and food supplies and trends will come and go, especially when you're in a space like this where things ebb and flow and they're a little bit different from year to year. Especially if you're a small farmer and you're offering different types of products and services, they'll ebb and flow as you grow. But those relationships will outlive that transactions. And if you don't foster those relationships, you won't have those partnerships in the future, because you've already burned those bridges in the back for an extra $1 on your dozen of eggs, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Oh, I like that. That's a great second piece of advice. And again, when we're having this conversation, I really like to open it up and feel where your story and the journey that you've taken lends to these entrepreneurs. And I think there's many more pieces that we could probably cover, and I want to get to those. And so let's keep the conversation going. That we are a platform that's trying to help inspire and also educate these entrepreneurs. And so there's going to be an opportunity for you and I. Let's get something on the books to do a masterclass. Have you share the knowledge that you've obtained on the podcast and in a live event where we can teach these small holder farmers to thrive and grow.
I love that. Yeah.
Let's do it. And then Judith, let's how can we, in the meantime, follow the work that you're doing, get in touch with you if we are going and taking that if we have those illegal chickens on our own little house and we're trying to make them legal, how do we contact you? How do we stay in touch and be more of what you're up to?
The best way to get in touch with me is to go to my website, and that is fairhillfarm.blog, B-L-O-G. Hopefully I'll get a .com in the near future. I don't have it yet. That's in the works. But for now, it is fairhillfarm.blog. And you can email me at Judith, Judith, at fairhillfarm.blog. I also have a podcast, which is not as prolific as yours.
Okay.
It is called Fair Hill Farmstead Life, and that's on Spotify and Podbean. I don't have it on Apple yet, but anyway, it's out there. There's links to it on my website as well, where I talk to people who have made the transition from a suburban life or a non-farming background into a farming kind of agrarian lifestyle, and they talk about their experiences and what that's been like. So that's what I focus on, and encouraging people to get started and just keep on keeping.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again, Judith, for joining us today. Thanks everybody for listening to today's episode. We will have those resources on our show notes on our website at seedsofdow.com. And you'll also be able to see those just in the description on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this podcast. So thanks again and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. I had so much fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. It really is a blessing and a pleasure to bring each episode to you. So what'd you think? If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Each review really does help us to further the reach of this podcast and move our mission forward to build regenerative economies in every bioregion. If you have a suggestion or feedback for us, please let us know in the open and free Regenerative Business Economies Network, known as regenBEN, which is linked in the description and in the show notes of this episode. regenBEN also has an awesome community request form that allows you to suggest guests, register to be a guest on the podcast, and share your own regenerative entrepreneur startup story, or any other suggestion you may have for the community. Without your feedback and requests, this podcast and community wouldn't be what it is, so please let us know. Nah, this may be bye for now. But remember, it doesn't end here. It has only just begun. The regenerative economies of the future start now with you.